You use the phrase, Chuck, cover up. And I mean, let's be realistic here. You've had lawyers on your broadcast, and the NBC's had lawyers on their network, and everybody's coming to the same conclusion regarding the legality. There's nothing illegal about that meeting. So that's number one. Like covering up that is a big word to use, but there was nothing illegal to cover up.
At least twice in the last month, the president has turned to one man to represent him on the big Sunday morning talk shows. He did not choose his vice president or his press secretary or any of his political advisors. He chose his personal lawyer, Jay Sekulow. In fact, it was just this morning that Trump needed Sekulow's legal services so much that Sekulow pulled off a rare full Ginsburg, the nerdy political term for appearing on all 5 Sunday talk shows. He did 4 of the 5 back on June 19th. And back with me, Karine Jean-Pierre, E.J. Dionne of the Washington Post, Michelle Bernard of the Bernard Center for Women, Politics, and Public Policy, and Fernand Amandi. I'm going to start introducing you guys all by your first names, because everybody knows you guys already. Fernand, I'm going to have you respond first. This is Jay Sekulow talking about when he himself knew about the Don Jr. meeting. Take a listen.
Did you only find out then? I mean, is that a concern to you that you're not getting all the information you need?
We don't represent Donald Trump Jr. We don't represent the campaign. We represent the president. So in that sense, we didn't have access to the information. We don't have control of data like that. The president doesn't have control of data like that. That was information that either Donald Trump Jr. had or the campaign had, or wherever the information was stored. But that would not have been information that the president of the United States would have had.
Fernand, my friend, are they throwing Don Jr. to the bus? Fernand? Do we have Fernand?
You listen to that comment by Jay Sekulow. The American people don't care what Jay Sekulow thinks. I certainly don't. They don't care what Donald Trump thinks. You know who they care? There's only one person in America that I think every patriotic American, Democrat, Republican, and Independent, cares about what they think. And that person is Special Counsel Robert Mueller.
That's right.
It doesn't really matter what anybody says anymore. This administration has lost all of its credibility. Let's wait and see what Mueller says. That's the sheriff they need to be worried about passing judgment.
Yeah, absolutely. And Karine, you know, at the same time, that sheriff is tied to an undersheriff who was fired, and his name is Jim Comey. And here's Jay Sekulow blaming this entire thing on Comey.
So the basis upon which this entire special counsel investigation is taking place is based on what? Illegally leaked information that was a conversation of the President of the United States with the then FBI director. And that, to me, is problematic from the outset, and I think that raises very serious legal issues as to the scope and nature of what really could take place.
This is essentially accusing Jim Comey of a crime.
Right. No, it is. I mean, it is just unbelievable what we're seeing here. Look, I'm hoping Jay Sekulow gets paid, because Donald Trump has a history of not paying for anything. And also, there's a story out there asking the Trump administration, asking the RNC to pay for his legal issues. So we'll see where it goes on there. But look, we cannot believe anything that they have to say.
Yeah.
When it comes to Russia, they have lied time and time again. So it's just a waste of our time.
Yeah.
This PR, this public relations, is not going to work, because I agree with what Amand said. The American people only care about our democracy. They really care about what is happening to our country here. And so this is not going to get us anywhere.
Yeah, but it's going to get us one more soundbite, because I'm going to play it. So Jay Sekulow now, for you, E.J. Dionne, and this is Sekulow talking about Donald Trump's involvement and what that might have been. Take a listen.
Tell me about the reports that the president was involved in the initial response that Donald Trump Jr. gave the New York Times.
So I read those reports as well, and the president did not draft the response. The response came from Donald Trump Jr., and I'm sure in consultation with his lawyer.
Was he asked to read the statement before it was given to the New York Times on Air Force One?
No, I mean, I can't say whether the president was told a statement was going to be coming from his son on that. I don't have that. I didn't have that conversation. I do want to be clear that the president was not involved in the drafting of the statement.
Well, that's contrary to the reporting, EJ, and it does feel like Junior is on an island, all lonely.
I think, to use an old phrase, it depends on what the meaning of the word draft is. I think what's very clear from the reporting is Donald Trump cooperated in the production of that statement, which suggests that, yet again, he was trying to mislead about Russia. And I think their big problem in the PR about this is they have what one conservative commentator called Russian amnesia, and that every time there was some meeting with some Russians, somehow it wasn't reported.
Yeah.
It wasn't talked about, and then they say, "Oh yeah, I forgot that."
Yeah.
Why is the thing they keep forgetting about Russia?
Yeah.
And that's why there is such skepticism about the administration.
Yeah, I kind of feel like Oprah. You get a soundbite from Jay Sekulow, and you get a soundbite. And now it's your turn, Michelle Bernard. Here comes the now emerging Ukrainian defense, which we're starting to hear bubble up from a lot of Republicans. Here he is.
Opposition research, if it would have materialized, is not a thing of value. There's never been a case that has said that opposition research is a thing of value. I don't think it's appropriate to conflate. The exact transaction as it was laid out in those emails, which was not a solicitation by the Trump campaign to get information, was an offer of opposition research. Compare that to what took place with the Ukrainians and the DNC, where they were working in collusion with each other.
Now it's the Ukrainians again.
I know.
What's happening?
Well, you know, it's always either President Obama, Hillary Clinton, or the Ukrainians. I mean,
Or the media.
Or the media, you know, or the fake news. The fault never falls within the people who are engaged in, at the very best, is just complete moral turpitude. They're giving a very new definition to trickle down economics. You know, it's drip, 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 a little bit more information every single day. It tears away at the democracy, and it tears away at our economy.
Absolutely. And Fernand, you know, the one other problem that they're going to have is that we now have some reporting. This is Yashar Lee in the Huffington Post. The Trump campaign paid $50,000 to Don Jr.'s criminal defense lawyer 11 days before that New York Times story broke. So they had some consciousness that he had some legal problems. It's hard to now say, oh, we don't talk to Don Jr. He does his own thing.
Not only that, Joy, I mean, listen, the chatter within the intelligence community, by the way, which all of the agencies of the U.S. government explicitly say Russia was involved and there is evidence of Trump collusion. What's going to happen if another shoe drops? It's bad enough this meeting. My understanding is this is the tip of the iceberg. What happens if signal intercepts come out with audio conversations? Are they going to say that they're doctored at that point? And I think that's the folly of this approach. Jay Sekulow, a lawyer who's lying on behalf of a president who lies. Again, we don't have to take those comments seriously. What we do have to take seriously is the evidence that is coming out in our media, and that's where I think you have to await what the actions of this administration are, because it's going to get worse.
And I think it does say something, and this is the panel, about, you know, the state that they're in, that they're having to send out the Sebastian Gorkas and the Jay Sekulows of the world. You know, Jay Sekulow, of course, recently the subject of his own expose in The Guardian, that his firm was steering millions of dollars to family members, this firm that was essentially raising money off of the religious and having them give to his organizations, and it was going to his family. That's what they've got left to send out.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they do. Trump deals with shady characters. We saw that when he was the CEO of his organization, and now as president, unfortunately, it's going to hurt us. I mean, and the other thing, too, I wanted to point out is, let's not forget, a week ago with the White House statement that was basically a lie. And
which one?
The one on Don Jr. That one, it was an outright lie, and it was a cover-up.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the White House being involved in a cover-up.
And the reality
Leading
is,
Republicans don't have the backbone yet to stand up to Trump. I'm talking about, say, congressional leaders, but they're not foolish enough, it seems, to go out there and defend all this stuff.
Right. That's right.
And so Trump has to rely entirely on this inner circle, pray that the Republicans continue not to criticize him.
Yeah.
But it just shows you how bad some of this stuff is.
And meanwhile, conspicuously absent on the Sunday shows is one Mike Pence, who seems to be trying to quarantine himself and staple himself inside a hermetic bubble, even though he's got some exposure on this, too.
He absolutely does, because the question is, he was, you know, his spokesperson was asked on Fox News earlier this week several times, very pointedly, has the vice president ever had any meetings with the Russian government or with Russian officials? And he went out of his way to refuse to answer the question.
No one can remember anything. That is going to be the key. We don't remember Russians. We don't remember meetings. We don't remember anything. You know, nothing. Thank you, Karine Jean-Pierre, E.J. Dion, Michelle Bernard, and Fernand Amandi. Love this panel. And coming up, a look at Donald Trump's long-standing ties to businesses where, say it together, Russia. That's next.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.